Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. In the first place, on behalf of Joe and myself, who are co-directors of a business unit in the Education Department called Community Engagement and Local Decision Making, I usually lose the argument about who speaks first, so you've got me for now. But if anybody would like to put up their hands and ask questions as we go, Joe's the man. We come from a long history of working in education in the Northern Territory. Joe's 30 years plus, and I'm about the same. And the difference being that Joe has spent 18 years of his time in community engagement, essentially. So when it comes to the depth of knowledge and experience, again, Joe's the man. But I've got the gig of starting this conversation off, and I'll try and tell a little bit of a potted history about how we came to be where we are right now. It is that in the lead up to the last election, the Gunner government promised community-led schooling, or community-led schools, and the Education Department is charged with the responsibility of implementing that. Not long after that, Michael Gunner made a statement at Jabiru where he set out the Department of Chief Minister's agenda for local decision making. So a combination of the election promise around community-led schools and our department's responsibility to implement local decision making within education has brought together our business unit that Joe and I co-direct. And the initiatives that are flowing from there are these. In the first place, how do we get local decision making happening in remote communities quickly? And the approach that we're going to be taking there, we're working on the actual detail of it right now. That's where we're up to. We're brand new, but we're working on the detail of it now, and it's to work with communities to remote communities specifically to establish local engagement and decision-making committees. So what we'll be doing henceforth is travelling out to at least 50 communities before the end of 2019 and talking with families there and establishing local decision-making committees that will work closely with the principal of the school and inform the organisation of that school as to what it is that the community wants to see happening in that school. So that's an immediate way of going about trying to get some level of community involvement in decision-making as soon as we can make it happen. The other major initiative in this is to acknowledge that this business about getting Aboriginal people involved in decision-making around what happens in schools isn't new. Joe and I know from our own personal experience that there was a review of Aboriginal education in 1999 called Learning Lessons, undertaken by Bob Collins and Tess Lee, and it recommended community-controlled schools. Government changed, bureaucracy changed, and community-controlled schools, whilst it was worked on for a while, a couple of years, not much eventuated from it. And, a few years into the next Labor government, Minister Sterling announced remote learning partnerships, which a lot of effort was put into. And if anybody was around in those days, and I know there are some people here who remember it very well, and a remote learning partnership that listened to the Yolngu of Yirrkala and took from them their wants and needs and aspirations and built it into a learning partnership agreement that was signed off by leaders, Yolngu leaders who aren't here today, who've passed away, I mean. And it was also, the other co-signatory was the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory at the time. So those 5 of those learning partnerships were signed. One of those was the one here at Yirrkala. It was signed on this Garma land, Gulkula land. And what eventuated from that also, when it was realised how expensive the process of implementing these partnerships might be, the will to implement it and develop them further drifted, and nothing much eventuated from there. Then there was a Minister Scrimgeour put a statement in the House about transforming Indigenous education and the formation of regional boards which would help inform the department about how to listen to parents and families and implement meaningful change that reflected their wants, needs and aspirations. That didn't last very long either. And then there was the intervention, which didn't listen to anybody at all. And you know, the story of it is long. The legacy of it is there's not much substance to it, we have to say. So Joe and I, who've been involved in it for that long, we're still around. We're still, especially Joe, we're still showing our faces and saying, "Oh, not much happened then. We're back again, and we're hoping we can do something substantial." We're basing this on the integrity of the government's intentions to listen to Yolngu properly, listen to Aboriginal people properly across the territory, and develop these relationships as much as possible. And to that end, apart from the local engagement and steering committees that we're talking about establishing in many communities very soon, we've been selective about the places where we particularly acknowledge that long history, acknowledge Aboriginal people's want for control, and those places, the first of those places, or not first, but there are 3 places where this business is happening. Gunbalanya has commenced it a couple of years ago and has developed its version of community-controlled governance, which is a board there, a fully elected, overseen by the Australian Electoral Commission election that reflected the community's diversity and values. And now they are moving into the world of control of expenditure, of curriculum, changes to curriculum. They also already have their seasonal calendar in place. The other 2 places where we're moving to develop community-led schools with the Yumbirpa schools, which is Yirrkala School and Yirrkala Homeland School, who've been at this for a long time, and sorry, tap on the leg there. Been at this for a very long time, and have a long history of exercising control and influence about what happens in the school, and it's waxed and waned depending on the government and the bureaucracy of the day, but they've continued to demand that. And if anybody listened to the powerful women speak here this morning, they'll know what we were talking about. The other is the 4 Walpiri communities in around the Tenamai Desert, who were very, very involved in the remote learning partnerships back in the early 2000s. Lajamanu, Yundamu, Willaura and Yirrapi, and probably they will tell us that they want to form a Walpiri Education Board and continue to take control of what happens, or to develop taking control of what happens with education in this space. I'm going to try. That's a quick overview, as quick as I can make it. But I do just want to reflect on what a couple of people that I took some notes about said. And Mr. Tillmouth talked about black education in black hands. He said, "Give us a steering wheel and we'll steer the future." I would argue that that's what we're set up to do. So our success or otherwise will be measured on how much we're prepared to give the steering wheel to Aboriginal people in how they approach education in their own communities. And the other was listening carefully to Peter's and Cam's presentation, and they continually referred to language that had "co" as the first part of the verb that they're about to go with, and they were things like co-construction, co-design, co-creation, and consultation and design and power sharing, and that's what we're charged with doing, and we hope that you'll hear more about it pretty soon. Joe, do you want to say anything? No. Okay. If anybody would like to ask us any questions, that'd be really helpful. We're here after. Good, thank you.
Cheers. Good.